You are listening to The Central Cast, a podcast for mystics and misfits just like you, recorded every week in Pasadena, California, before a live audience. Thanks for tuning in.
It moves in such a ethereal way. Is it too high? Okay, we're good. Well, I wasn't sure if we were going to do this, but I want to start with a little life news because there's some things that have happened in our congregation this week, and some of you know that Benji, who's been with us since for 6 months or so? Or has it been longer than that? 3 or 4 months. Halloween? Specifically, Anne knows. Do you know the hour? Okay. Well, Benji was having some adventures in Costa Rica that went awry, and he severely broke his ankle. And the poor guy is in a wheelchair. He's got a big pink cast. And so we did start a meal train, which hopefully you saw, for him, because he was having some trouble just feeding himself, getting meals on the table. And there was a generous outpouring from lots of people in this congregation. And I got a text from Benji this morning that I want to read. Please express how grateful I am for the church's support. The love means so much. My surgeon said I'm healing perfectly. It's going to be a long road of physical therapy, but the love and support is getting me through. So if you haven't had a chance to donate to the meal train and you would like to, it's still open. Should be in your email. It's also on the congregational Facebook page, or you can talk to me or Aaron or Bob or anyone on the board. So, and I want to thank all of you and the pastoral staff, especially for being so gracious with me as I deal with my dog being attacked by a coyote, which I do not recommend. She's super, super lucky to be alive because she's big. So it went for the legs, not the throat or the organs. It wasn't actually trying to kill her. I like to think it was trying to defend itself because my dog was about to kill it. But anyway, defend the property. But anyway, I know I've been sort of in and out a little bit just dealing with that, and I appreciate everyone's patience with me and love for me and my fur baby. Any other life news that anyone wants to share? What's going on? I mean, there's almost nothing going on in the world to report, but maybe something personal. Anything. Well, there'll be another chance to share at the end of the sermon because, as it seems to be my thing, I'm going to talk about stuff that's kind of personal, and maybe that will bring out something in you. And so I do want to invite you. I'm going to be talking about a particular vulnerability of my own, and I'm going to name it, but I invite you to think about what is that particular vulnerability in your own life that just will not go away, that is constantly reminding you of your human frailty. So for some reason, it often happens to me that right around New Year's, right around the beginning of the year, I don't really make resolutions, but around the new year, something happens and I kind of settle into some truths about myself. And those truths feel different at this time of year because I tend to say them to myself without explaining or justifying or saying, well, this is true, but I'm going to aspire to something else. I don't couch it in any of that stuff. It's like there's this weird vortex moment in the year where there's no past and there's no future, so there can be no regrets and no hopes. I just see like the what actually is of my life. And in that moment this year, at the turning of the year, this is what I said to myself. I said, Julie, you are full of self doubt, and you always have been. And nothing that you have ever done has changed that fact. And that maybe sounds kind of confessional to you, maybe like something I should have saved for therapy. Trust me, I've done that. Or worse, this will be the worst. Maybe it sounds like something that makes you think, oh, after this sermon, I should walk up to Julie and say, but you're so great. Which is very sweet, but there is no need to do that because there's no reason for my self-doubt. Like, it's not logical, and yet I am full of it, just as certain as I'm wearing this rust-colored jacket. So, at the turning of the year, this self-doubt stuff, it didn't hit me like a realization, or at least, like, not a new one. It hit me more as, like, a deep and full acceptance of something that I know about myself, that I've always known about myself, that I've never particularly liked, but there it is. And so in this moment of like no nagging regrets and no distracting hopeful thinking, I've been just like sitting with my self-doubt because swatting it away does no good. Like it like a annoying little no-see-um, right? It just comes right back. And I'm stuck with it, and that's kinda what I've been sitting with. I'm just stuck with it, and as I sit with it, with just no judgment, I sense a greater peace in my body. It kind of feels good just to welcome something and just not judge it, right? It makes me feel more grounded, almost like I swallowed a paperweight or something, and it's just like, "Okay, Julie, this is it. You're staying right here. You're gonna look at this. You're gonna focus. You're gonna be honest about it." And so I looked at this self-doubt, like, kind of like it's an object, right? It reminds me that it's part of me. It isn't me, but it's a part of me. And so I could kind of look at it and think, like, "What do I want to do with you? What can I do with my self-doubt? What can I do with the way that it makes me feel in my body when I'm feeling it? What can I do when it makes me feel so fragile that I want to withdraw? What can I do when it makes me feel so tense for an answer that I feel like I would just do anything to find some ultimate that can't ever be doubted? Or what do I do with it when it makes me feel sort of warm with shame or embarrassment?" And one thing that happened this year as I was sitting with this was that I was able to understand in simpler terms that this self-doubt, it has a story. I used to think I was just born with it, like I was born with brown hair. It was just natural to me. But through the years, I've realized that that's not true. Something happened. And it's important to acknowledge it, that when I was a child, my dad was consistently bubbling over with hate and rage. He externalized all of that, right, onto minorities, women. I mean, the things I heard at the dinner table, not good, right? But he also externalized it onto, most directly onto his family. He was was and is a verbally abusive man with people and physically abusive with animals. And he made us all afraid of what he might do next. Because I never knew when the rage would come. I didn't understand what had started it. I didn't know why it came. And I really didn't ever know why it was always everybody else's fault. And so as a kid, I'm filled with this confusion. And so I when I was little, I did bring it up with my parents, and I was always told, "This is how men are, period. They get angry. It's what they do. This is the world. Stop being so sensitive." Over and over and over again. And I was so confused because especially, I mean, I little kids are amazing, right? I mean, if only they could articulate themselves better, we would learn so much more from them. But like every single thing inside me was like, this is wrong. Every feeling, what I saw with my eyes and what I felt with my body told me it was wrong. But the adults said it's right. And there is nothing to be corrected here. And so, I was a third child, youngest child, people pleaser, and so I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna try to make this right. I'm gonna try to make it right in my own head, to make it seem sensical to me, the way the adults say it is." And so I would spend hours alone just trying to internalize how it made sense that harming other people was loving and Christ-like, because before everything else, my dad told me the Bible is an instruction book, I follow it. And I think I had to as a kid, like, I had to try and figure this out. Because the adults said, "This is the way it is, this is right." And, you know, and so I tried to figure it out, and then I tried to tell myself, like, okay, my perceptions and my feelings and my intuitive sense and my brain, they're all wrong because the adults say this. All of those things that I have in me to know the world, they're all fooling me. And so, like, it's no wonder that I'm full of self-doubt, right? Everyone in this room now understands what it took me decades, right, to figure out. So I had to denaturalize everything that I was told about the world. I saw it was wrong and was told it was right. So I grew up to doubt my senses and my perceptions. So, I think there was a time when I was sort of, in therapy or writing in my journal or whatever, where I thought, like, if I could just understand the story of this thing, right? If or we could just understand the story of something, that would, like, take its power away, right? There is a power in knowing something's story, we can give it an identity, but in my experience, it doesn't take this vulnerability away. And so I still have to deal with it, and I used to deal with it by every morning I woke up and I was like, "I'm gonna prove myself today." And every morning it was the same thing, nothing carried over. There was no, like, it wasn't like vacation days at work, it was like every day I was starting at 0 and I had to work my way up. And man, was that exhausting. I call that period my 30s. And now that I'm in my 50s, I see it in other people, and it's so painful to see it. But man, it was so exhausting to me, and it was so annoying to other people, and if you knew me then, thank you for sticking around, because I just imagine I was a super hard person to be around. And I think I've burned off most of that prove yourself every day energy. And as I said, now I can kind of, like, calmer, I can sit with the self-doubt, and I've been practicing framing it in different ways. And I've been framing it in a way lately that has brought me back to scripture quite naturally. I was not looking to, let's go to the Bible. Everything can be solved if we just look in the Bible, right? You all know me enough to know that didn't happen. But I have found a lot of guidance in the story of Jesus, actually, and I wanna share that with you this morning. I've been thinking about how Jesus's radical humility might serve as an antidote to my self-doubt, or rather how it might serve as a way of helping me live with it more meaningfully. Now, you'd never know it from the MAGA folks and the Christian right and from anything that the current regime says about Christianity, but actually Jesus's ministry was not at all about winning, commanding, ruling, compelling, or really any form of aspiration. Jesus's ministry was all about giving up power. And let me clarify what I mean by that term, because power, there is spiritual power. There's the power of love. Right? Those are wonderful forms of power. When I say power today, what I'm referring to is ego, might, superiority, manipulation, privilege, dominance, all the things that Jesus was campaigning against. So again, Jesus's ministry, from what I see, was all about giving up power. And I see this in three pieces of scripture that are central to my life as a follower of Jesus. The first is the Beatitudes. That's the list of blessings that begins the Sermon on the Mount. I think it's in 3 of the 4 Gospels. Aaron?
Matthew.
Is it in John?
Yeah, pretty much. It's in pieces.
Chapter and verse, please. So here Jesus blesses the poor, the meek, the bereft, the hungry, the merciful, the childlike, the peacemakers, and the persecuted. So blessings are conferred essentially according to what you do not have. Blessings are conferred based on what you are willing to give up, namely, that you are willing to not seek power. And this could not be clearer in the Beatitudes. The second scripture is sometimes referred to as the Christ hymn. It's in Philippians, Paul's letter to the church at Philippi, and he summarizes what he calls the mind of Jesus and says, "Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave and assuming human likeness." So Jesus, divine Son of God, chosen one, or more secularly, let's call him the most privileged and powerful person, threw away all of the trappings of power. Every external resource that he could have used to prop up his ego and his status, he emptied himself of. Instead of aspiring, literally aspiring to anything, he settled in with humanity, with all of its failings and shortcomings. So the third moment is the cross. The cross for the Romans, for the empire, the cross was supposed to be where targets of the state were performatively stripped of their status and therefore utterly humiliated. The cross was a form of punishment that wasn't just we want to kill you. It wasn't just state execution, it was state humiliation. So the empire handed Jesus a cross, this mechanism of crushing power, in order to say, you are a delusional, weak man and you have failed. Nothing that you have said is true. And then Jesus took the cross and said, you don't know what you're doing. I forgive you. And changed the meaning of the cross from the humiliation of the powerless to the unmasking of the powerful. The last shall be first, because you cannot cut down someone who never aspired to status. You cannot subjugate someone who never wanted power, and you cannot kill someone whose life was never about himself. In these three scriptures and many others, Jesus' radical humility enshrined for us a new set of values to live and die by. the empire, the regime, Herod, Caesar, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, they think these values are delusional. Who would propose that the meek and the poor and the peaceful are the ones on top when clearly the world belongs to the ambitious, the aggressive, and the wealthy? But this is the framework we get to live in if we so choose and live abundantly. The reality where the meek and the mourning, the self-doubting, and the persecuted get a hero's storyline and main character energy. With Jesus, lack is gain, absence is presence, weakness is strength. Blessings are conferred according to what you do not have. We are blessed based on our willingness to not seek power. So this is the frame that is helping me with my first persistent self-doubt, my particular sense of lack. That there is something truly sacred in our human limitations. And that this maybe is the transformation wrought by Jesus' life and death. The sacredness of our human limitations. And so I remind myself, I've been reminding myself that there are blessings in what I do not have, certainty and arrogance included. And by blessings, I mean essentially that I am accompanied in my weakness and in my lack. I am accompanied. I am not alone, and I am only wrong if my goal is to be right rather than connected, good, and loving. And so this is what I'm practicing. In my mind and in my body, when I feel lack, I imagine Jesus there in that space. Where I feel self-doubt, there is God. When I start to doubt myself because I have fallen short of the standards set by those who worship power and control and certainty, I remind myself that I do not worship those things. I'm practicing this frame where I see my self-doubt as holy. I remind myself that in my self-doubt, in being aware of my limitations and my humanity and my faults, and in laying myself bare, I am actually connecting myself to all of creation, which is as fragile and interdependent as I am. And I am living the way that I was designed to live by a creator who glorified all those who saw the world clearly and were made to pay the price in and with their bodies. It's hard work. It's not easy living by this other set of values that Jesus gave us, seeing the world clearly and persisting in that vision when all the powerful forces try to crush and warp and deny that vision. It's hard work to constantly push back on all of that incessant force. And at the same time, remember that our self-doubt, our weakness, whatever it is, and our stubborn resistance to violence is a reminder of our kinship with one another and with the divine. And I don't know about you, but all of this hard work of pushing against, I've felt it really viscerally these last couple of weeks because we all see what's happening. We saw the raw and immoral and violent murder of Renee Good with our own eyes. We saw it. And then the machine of power, the evil regime, told us we didn't see it. Told us that a terrorist who did not obey got what was coming to her. Humiliation, death, crucifixion. Renee Good was loving her neighbor, putting others first, and putting her body on the line. Her last words were so much like Jesus' last words. "I'm not mad at you," she said to her murderers. And then she was dead. Her radical humility and service to others unmasked the regime that seeks the humiliation of the meek, the peaceful, the persecuted, and the poor. Her story is sacred, and the despair that we are all feeling is sacred. These are our bodies on the cross. And with every limitation we feel, every moment of suffering and resistance, we have the opportunity to unmask the lies by which evil perpetuates. So those are my thoughts this morning. As we open up discussion, I'd love to hear anything that you're thinking. I'll give a couple of different directions. I'm curious, are there ways that Jesus' story is speaking to you in these times, either these political times or these times for you personally? Does his humility feel empowering to you, or maybe frustrating in the face of such inhumane acts? Or maybe the talk reminded you of some persistent little thing in you that you struggle with and beat yourself up about. So, yeah. Aaron, do you have the mic?
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Julie. No, I was just thinking as you were talking, it was really therapeutic for me just because I'm really striving to live with a softer presence in my home life as a dad myself. I was raised in the Midwest by, I don't know, and also like my father wasn't a very comforting presence in the home. And I can find myself being, I think I carry a lot of energy naturally.
Mm.
And I feel like my energy sometimes can be, abrupt or loud. And no, I hear that and I'm like, I want to be, it was really therapeutic. I want to be a softer presence in my home life and not be, the loud dad, and I'm not like, I don't want to paint like a picture like that's really bad. But I'm just naturally a high energy person and a little high strung. And I'm very like cognizant of that. And I just want to be personally more, I don't know, just to be aware of that and be more of who I really am, which I think is a more empathetic, softer presence. But my default setting is we got stuff to do, let's do it, and let's go. You know what I mean? And maybe some of that is born out of my own insecurity. So this was very helpful for me. And I know you were talking about self-doubt, but I was hearing about understanding power dynamics as well, and understanding the presence and the energy we bring into situations is different depending on the context.
Yeah.
And I love, thinking a lot about, specifically with my faith, power dynamics and switching from that evangelical God of power, certainty, and might, and presence, and embracing the God of weakness and powerlessness and love and compassion, and that which the world sees as weak, we see as strong. How the question becomes for me, how do I embrace that in other aspects of my life? So that was really good. And I just wanted to comment also that I think for me as this kind of high energy male, how I think about those dynamics is different than maybe a woman might. And I think some women, I've heard other women speak on this topic before. I can't remember the author, but anyway, she talks about how a lot of men need to hear that they need to let go of their ego. And a lot of women need to hear that, no, you need to embrace your ego. You need to embrace your power. You need to embrace. I love the interpretive dance that's taking place to my right here. But you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
A lot of women don't need to hear, let go of yourself, let go of your ego, embrace powerlessness, because they've already done that. And it's not served them well. You know what I mean?
I totally
So
do.
it's kind of like, I was just thinking about those power dynamics. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much for sharing. And what's interesting about that last thing you said is that I've noticed in my own life, it's so important, right, to have just like how to deal with conflicts modeled to us. And to what you're saying, Aaron, I think for me as a woman, I have found that, my go-to is just withdraw. But then when I have needed to interact, the only model I had for that was that high energy dominance. And so, for me, it's like, how do h- I need, how do, men and women, or, those who are dominant and those who tend to be more like submissive, how do we just learn skills of interacting that are neither of that are neither of those things? And I heard one of my favorite writers, George Saunders. I was listening to an interview of him this past week, and he has this reputation for being like one of the kindest people, and it kind of dogs him, right? Because then if he's ever not kind, they're like, "Oh, you're not." And but he said something that I have found so true for myself, because Aaron, you said like, "Oh, that's not me," like the softer me is me. And I have found in myself, when I am in a hurry, that is the trigger more than anything. When I feel crunched for time, that's when, that more like dominance, I'm going to take control of this situation, comes out. And the only point of mentioning George Saunders is that he's like, I am not kind when I don't have time. And it sounds so simple, and I've had people dismiss that before, but I mean, we live in a world that is moving so fast and demanding so much of us that I would not want to underestimate the role of being in a hurry, you know, getting kids ready for school, trying to get dinner on the table before the board meeting, stuff like that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I identify and probably will be more labeled as, it's like I don't know what the correct term is, but like a soft boy. Yeah, I just and Joaquin, my kid, is also very much a soft boy. So we frolic through life, and we're like Ferdinand the Bull, we just like pull the flowers out of the grass, right?
Oh man.
And I don't know how big he's gonna be, but like I know for myself, like I'm like you know slightly taller and bigger and stuff like that. So that has its pros at times. But uh, I think it's weird because I feel like I'm in this point in life where I've become fully confident in embracing who I truly am and who I want to be, which is the soft boyish kind of like persona, right? But then the struggle with that is, and also living in, it's not just LA, but everywhere has its own dynamic. But I think living in the society and a culture where it's like success is measured by finances, right?
Yeah.
Like worth, not just financial, but like in like physical and all that. And so there's so many boxes and that I feel like I'm not checking. And like one, I feel like there's a part of me where I feel like I'm letting myself down because I feel like I'm not succeeding in life the way I need to.
Hmm.
Now, do I feel successful in terms of who I've wanted to become
Hmm.
in a way? Yeah.
Hmm.
But that doesn't pay the bills, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't, right? And so
Yeah.
there's this weird dynamic of confidence but then also self-worth, just like having this battle with each other. And I'm trying to do my best to like, you know, encourage his gentleness, and but then also try to teach him to also stand up for himself.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like and when I was younger, it was the opposite, right? I didn't have the confidence, but I felt like fine with all being
Yeah.
successful in a different way. So now it's flipped, and I, as an adult, as a parent, as getting to midlife, right? I feel very devalued in a way,
Hmm.
and I'm doing that to myself in a way, right? But then also just looking at everyone and everything around me, it doesn't measure up. That's hard. That's really hard for me to take in at times, and then still try to be positive and still try to be
Yeah.
like happy soft boy. Mm. But I think one of the coolest things about Jesus is, granted, he lived a life of just ministry and on the road and just and at his posse. Mm, and and when other people idolize all these different versions of success,
Hmm.
I look at that and I'm like, man, That's like the coolest thing ever. Right? To just be able to believe what you mean, believe what you say, and then express that and put it out there and truly not really want anything more.
Yeah.
Just to love and take care of those around you. And I'm just, you know, I envy that reality.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to balance that.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorian.
I was just thinking, for me, power for me is like ease. Like, I think there's a lot of ease in power. And like, if I don't have that necessarily, like, I'm constantly gripping and trying to control. And of course I am, because this world is it's very easy to get wrapped up in success and money and status and all of that. But I think there's a certain kind of power in just releasing control, just kind of letting go, not giving up per se, but yeah, just letting go. And then when I do fall into that trap, instead of getting on to myself and in a really forceful way, like, why did you do that? Why, you know better than this? To just almost kind of like laugh at myself or giggle at myself. Like, of course you did. Of course you did, Sarah. You're a human. Everyone does that. And yeah, I just feel most powerful when I'm at ease.
Yeah. Even your hand motions, remind me of like letting things flow through you, like instead of gripping them.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll say something too.
I think you said something about how what makes us, I forget the word, like what makes us weak or what makes us, I don't know. Vulnerable is like kind of what connects us all together.
Yeah.
And that's, as I was stewing on that, it's kind of, I think that's always the thing. It's like connection, right? I feel like I'm not good enough. And because I'm not good enough, I can't connect with people. But, it's in our vulnerabilities that we connect with each other. But the thing is, like, when you interact with other people, majority of people aren't being vulnerable. So you're like, why can't I connect with this person? I feel like I can't connect with anybody.
Yeah.
It must be because of me. It must be because I'm not good enough. It must be because I'm not smart enough. It must be because I'm not capable enough. Because if I was, then I'd be able to, quote unquote, connect with them. Because, oh my God, look at them. They're so amazing and they're so great and they're so smart or whatever. But that is kind of a thing that people present themselves as almost like an authentic version of themselves. So it's like, how am I supposed to connect with other people when they're being inauthentic? And I think it takes a lot of energy to just be like, okay, I'm okay with who I am. I need to accept who I am. And all of humanity is dealing with this. But currently, like, sometimes when you meet with people, you don't get that from other people. You don't say, hey, I'm going through the same thing as you are. Hey, it's okay. Or, hey, I'm going through the exact same thing. And, it's easier to connect and everyone is being vulnerable and honest. But it's just hard when you face people who aren't doing that. And so you feel just ostracized from the world. And it's like, well, what's wrong with me? But like you said, it's in those kind of human moments that connect us. But sometimes humans aren't being humans. And so it's kind of hard.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for holding up that point about inauthenticity and authenticity. A huge part of this.
Thanks. I was just is this one?
It is.
Thinking about that. I think it was the 80s when people used to say, what would Jesus do?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, what did Jesus do? He said, the meek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
The things that we see are temporary. The unseen things are eternal. And I try to remember that when things are bothering me in my life. It's like, this is going to pass. Just walk in the light.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did Jesus do? And follow that example.
I love that. I've literally never made that term, that turn, like from would to did. Yeah.
So when you said the word vulnerable,
Yeah.
it brought to my mind an author and a speaker. I don't know if you all know Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the bottom of my work email that goes out with, after my kind regards thing, here's a quote that I have from her. The heart of leadership is connection, and connection is about empathy, curiosity, and emotional courage.
Mhm.
Just my little moment to
Yeah.
hopefully have people stop and get off the power train for a moment and think.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's really great.
Thank you. Yeah,
Check out
she's
her
great.
books.
Yeah, she's been the champion of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a champion of vulnerability. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, so as you all know, I was raised, I think I've mentioned before that I was raised in a very Catholic family. I can't blame everything the religion because my mom was she was a single parent and she was working a lot. So it wasn't really her. She had different ideology, but I was practically raised by my grandparents and they were very, very Catholic but they weren't really like practicing the rituals that they were extolling. They would, it was a very physically abusive environment, verbally abusive. And, and it was always like, it was instilled they would always ask me, don't you feel guilty? Don't you feel guilty? It was, and I'm racked with guilt now, because of it. But, I was reading Aaron's book, The Guide for Heretics. Yeah, so we were talking. Okay, the survival. Yeah, so we did. I was thinking about this deconstructing religion, and so my understanding is that as a language, we don't all speak language. We speak a language. Very like a religion. So I'm currently going through that process, but there's still a lot of the Catholicism that's in here. It's hard for me to get it out at this point. But anyways, with my family, yeah, they were like that, and the men in family, they were very misogynist. They were misogynistic, I guess that's the word. And I was very sensitive. I used to I loved animals. Because they were so non-judgmental. And I would my when when we were in Texas, I used to go in the back with the horses. Until like one time one of them had a foal and she tried to kick me because she was like getting protected of it.
Yeah.
But I remember just loving animals and just being around them, and to them that was like they were so beautiful. They just because they wanted me to, eventually grow up and be like this macho guy and I guess go to the military. And I think my grandpa said, "You're gonna go to the military," and I told him, "No, I'm gonna go to the Peace Corps because there's something that would really bother him." And I would rebel like a lot, I think, but I grew up really just feeling this guilt, and I actually had a lot of problems. I gone to therapy a lot. I had been diagnosed with anxiety disorder. I was actually diagnosed at one point with being bipolar, and so I was always like, like a spinning wheel. Like, I was very erratic. But now, as an adult, now that I could think for myself, I mean, these doctors, that's what they diagnosed, but it's come out that it's just think it was conditioning
Yeah.
from my upbringing, because they even told me, even like the most recent doctor told me, he goes, "I don't think you have that." He goes, "You don't exhibit that." He said, "I think it's more like trauma, like coming back to you from like, things that you've gone through in the past." And so now, like, what's making and this journey I've started a long time ago, like, just try to get, because I have that I always have anxiety, and I was like, and that has affected my life, my relationships with others, with everyone, because I have this. But slowly, I know it's a mental thing, and I really think that I never had. Now I realize that I don't think I've ever had anything. It was just me, like the way it was conditioned.
Yeah.
And so I just had to learn how to cope with all this. And and the thing that has helped me too is like I do think, okay, well, I'm a child of God. Like I have him within me. And because before, like, I mean, you have to practice self love, because I didn't love myself before. And so that has been a weakness of mine, but I'm slowly overcoming it.
Thanks for sharing, sir. It's all very relatable.
Yeah. We can't blame Catholicism for everything, but
Let me
Yeah,
try.
but I'm gonna do it for the next.
It's a change from us blatant
Yeah.
evangelicals only.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but that Catholic guilt is so real. It's like, and it's so hard to shake. And I think I didn't really realize how big a part of my life it was until like over the last year.
Mm.
But that's something that I struggle with is feeling guilty all the time. But my thing is that like a huge weakness of mine is I'm the oldest child of a first generation in everything, right? And so there's always been this like it was never pushed on me, but there's always been this like inherent need within myself to like keep going and to always to never stop. And it's one of the things that we're working through in therapy, my therapist and I, is that I have this. I feel like I'm too hard on myself, and I never let myself just breathe. I always feel like I have to be doing something. And one of the things that tying it back to guilt is that when I'm not doing something, I feel so guilty. Even if I'm just sitting and enjoying, if I'm just sitting and watching the TV, I'm like, I should be doing something right now. And it's been so hard because it's like, I really feel like for 26 years of my life, it's been nonstop. Just once I finish one task, I'm on to the other. And recently my therapist asked me, she was like, what does rest look like for you? And I was like, I don't know, because it's like, I don't, even when I'm resting, I'm doing something else. And, again, I don't want to blame it all on Catholicism, but I do think it is this guilt that was put on me that I should feel guilty in enjoying myself, in pleasure.
Right.
Because, within Catholicism, you're kind of, some circles teach you that you should feel guilty about doing the things that bring you pleasure. And so I think that is like a struggle that I've had. And I thought, when I left Catholicism, I thought there was going to be this change, especially talking to other non-denominational Christians, kind of, on the more evangelical side. Again, I had this, my most recent ex, she was raised in that sphere. And so as I was shopping around for other churches and I would go to hers, I saw, she'd tell me her story, her family story. And I always thought like, okay, there's going to be this big transformation that's going to happen for me. But it didn't happen. I didn't feel like there was this big transformation. And I just steal from what has become one of my favorite movies recently, Wake Up Dead Man. There's a bit in it where Josh O'Connor's character says, God didn't transform me. He didn't change me. He sustains me, daily bread. And I think that's what I found, is that there wasn't this great big change, this great big transformation, but what has helped me feel and slowly get better at allowing myself to just sit is this knowledge that like, I wasn't warped. I wasn't transformed into this new person, this huge dynamic change, but I am being sustained by what I truly feel is his love and his hope. And I feel that every day. And it's the more and more that I sit with it, that I'm like, I am allowed to enjoy myself, and I am allowed to do the things that bring me joy and pleasure, because that is kind of the whole point of this faith and this religion, is that knowing that Jesus and God, they're in every aspect of our life, and pleasure and enjoyment is godly, and it is, I just can't believe that we're supposed to not enjoy life. Right. So that's that's definitely a weakness of mine, but I'm trying again, trying every day. It's knowing that I'm being sustained, and knowing that there is a love for me, and that, again, another line from that movie, he says, God loves me when I'm guilty, and I think that's been the biggest thing that I'm learning.
Thank you. Like accepting that we are loved just because we are, not because of what we do.
So this is weird, turning the camera. I think another aspect of this is that, like, learning these things about ourselves and learning to recognize how our trauma, our upbringing, or bad messaging, or whatever it is, warped things for us in some ways. Like, I think sometimes though, like in the song that you sang, the line about the sun isn't what makes us grow, it's the rain. And I'm not trying to make it like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not that. It's that I think some of the transformation comes when we acknowledge those aspects of our lives, when we understand them, and then they get changed from a weakness into a strength. So I grew up in a kind of topsy-turvy, crazy household, and with a lot of substance abuse. And I was the youngest, and I was the good kid. And so I was okay. And so I was left to my own devices, and I was a good kid, thankfully. So I didn't get into any trouble. And I grew up, and I went to college, and I was the success story, so to speak. The what?
Look at you now.
And look at me now. But what I learned from that, the negative part that I learned from that was nobody takes care of Anne. Anne takes care of herself. Emotionally, physically, and on the outside, you would have said Anne was taken care of. So it's not like I was, not fed and left in a room by myself. But emotionally, I wasn't taken care of because they didn't know any better. They didn't realize what was happening. They were keeping people alive. And Anne was alive. So she was fine. So I learned extreme self-reliance. Like those videos that you see of women who figure out a way to get the thing up on the top shelf that they should have asked for help where. But they stack up a couple of things, and that's
too
ruptured disc to prove it. But what it also fostered in me indirectly is inexplicably like a strong sense of self-confidence because I can take care of myself, and a strong ability to be competent at things. And so, I'm not trying to say again, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, but it's only been through learning and understanding more about those vulnerabilities that I'm able to tap into more the strengths that came from that struggle. And, I started doing that a little bit later in life than most of you guys. So good on you, 26. I'm like, geez, I could have avoided a lot. No, 26. So that's just another little twist, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I do believe our vulnerabilities, our weaknesses can be our greatest strength. Yeah. Okay. Shall we with the benediction? Okay. As we go from this place, we commit ourselves to the path of love, honesty, and humility. We dedicate ourselves as Christ did to the cause of justice and the courageous embrace of this life, this world, and each other. Amen. Thank you all. What a wonderful discussion.
Pastor Julie. I don't know.
Oh, I think it's on the bottom.
Thanks for listening in on this week's edition of the Central Cast. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you join us next time. Bye-bye.